We'd like to thank our formal partner, PLAEX Building Products. PLAEX has a 60,000 square foot facilitation center currently underway, as well as acquired a new location in Windsor. Lots of change and big news with PLAEX, and we look forward to having them back on the podcast in the near future. We'd like to thank our co-branded partner, Procore Technologies. Procore Technologies is the global leader in construction management software. We look forward to having many guests from across the country from all different capacities under the Procore partnership umbrella. Luminous Labs is the leading provider of architectural visualizations for developers, homeowners, architects, and more. Luminous Labs has a team of experienced designers and visualizers using cutting-edge technology to bring your 3D renderings to life. Using these architectural visualizations will give you a sense of scale, space, and design, allowing you to make informed decisions about your projects before construction even begins. These high-end architectural visualizations are a perfect tool for presentations, marketing materials, and design reviews, allowing you to communicate your vision to stakeholders, clients, and more. Okay, welcome back to the Atlanta Construction Podcast. Pleased to have our guest today, Dustin Bowers from New Brunswick, with PLAEX Building Systems, founder and CEO. And I think we were just talking, and you just got back from Switzerland in a
so I just earlier this summer I went and spent 3 weeks there for the Mass Challenge in Lausanne.
Were you invited to that?
Yeah, we were invited actually last year, but we just didn't have the bandwidth or time to do it. And then this year we were invited again. We're like, well, they're pretty persistent. We should go check it out. Through a lot of the advisor and mentor groups that I've been part of, they advise, if you ever get a chance to go to Europe to one of the accelerators, do it. The connections you're going to make are absolutely invaluable. And they were right. So I went and spent 3 weeks there back June, July.
What was it like in Switzerland, just on the side?
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Switzerland,
hard to describe.
Switzerland is rated as the best country in the world, and I would agree. I mean, they know what they're doing. They're doing it right. Yeah, the taxes might be high, but
wise,
it's not like the taxes aren't high here. So
yeah. Just quality of life. Like what was it about?
Yeah,
what is it about?
It's clean. The roads are good. The buildings look well kept. The people are friendly. There seems to be more objective freedom. There's direct democracy. They have referendums there every year. People actually vote on the issues that matter. They don't just vote for the people who represent them. They actually vote on issues. There's a lot more involvement, community involvement. There's more network. It's more business friendly. Like Switzerland's very, very, very business friendly. It's amazing how many expats I met there.
Right.
People who were in Canada doing business, and they went, "No, business is a little better over here." So
really,
it's amazing. It's
maybe more welcoming for an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
for startup companies and
that's kind of at the heart of Europe. Like they're very central in Europe, so like it's a really good place to be able to spread out from and connect from. The dollar there is probably one of the highest in the world as far as value. It kind of sucks coming from Canada and going there because the exchange rate sucks, but
yeah.
They have, people there are paid good living wages for the most part. The standard of living is much higher from what I saw in Switzerland than it is here. It's subjective, I guess, but it seems like much smarter policies that they put through there because they have that direct democracy. So it was cool. It was a really cool experience. I got to meet some amazing people doing amazing things. Switzerland has really done really well at attracting skilled talent to the country. Canada, we're bringing in lots of people. Switzerland really focused in on how do we get high value immigration? How do we get people, the most brilliant minds to come here? And it shows. It's paying off for the country. So it was an amazing experience. Absolutely enjoyed it. Highly recommend going and checking out Switzerland and the rest of Europe. It's
how's the food?
Yeah, so good. For the most part. There was one restaurant I went to that I was very disappointed,
yeah.
But all in all, for the most part, phenomenal food.
It's good. 9 out of 10 then.
Yeah.
So this was a pitch competition, and you were seeking investors, right? Just private investors, angel investors.
Yeah. So the Mass Challenge Switzerland is put on by sponsorship from several corporate parties. One of them being Bueller, who, according to their pitch, they touch about 2 billion people daily with their equipment. They manufacture dies for money. They manufacture the machinery that makes your cereal, that processes your rice, that roasts your coffee, that processes your chocolate. They make all the machinery for all of that stuff.
Right. So it's strictly a tech
Yeah.
themed.
Yeah.
Nice.
Got to meet with executives from Bueller and talk about, opportunities there. Nestle's based there. We got to meet with, Nestle's sustainability group and, discussing various things there. There's a big focus through the Switzerland Mass Challenge around food tech. So there's, quite a few food tech oriented funding partners. Mm-hmm. But then there was also a good bit in manufacturing side as well. Amia is another one. They're like a mineral supplier. They started as a mining company, but they've really kind of focused in on specific mineral supply for large scale industry. So they have additives for the concrete industry, or they have additives for gypsum, or they have additives for, right? And so they supply these various mineralogical additives. A bunch of really cool
that are
companies.
more sustainable than the typical aggregates.
That's the idea. Yeah, and I mean, not so much just aggregates, like they're specific chemistries, right?
Okay.
They've dialed more into the specific chemistries of things. It was an amazing time. Got to learn a whole bunch. Connected with some of the corporate sponsors. And it's really helping to move us forward as well. So
that's really cool. Yeah, I mean this PLAEX Building Systems. I mean, you can tell us the backstory, kind of inception in 2017, or that's kind of when you started investing some time into it, and then 2020, kind of devoting all your time to this new business, and it's you're recycling materials across different facets, or different, like, from marine or from all kinds of different waste, to build this new method of building with these blocks, and completely interlocking, goes together like Lego. There's no cutting, so you're avoiding a lot of and you're producing the technology to manufacture this, right? This is a tech company, PLAEX. So I'll just let you kind of give us the.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start back. The
Cold
inception,
notes.
the inception of it was back in 2017, shortly after the birth of my first kid. I was working for a construction and renovation company, managing the majority of the company for my boss. And at the peak of it, I think we had 18 projects, about 12 million in capital, was moving through. And it just struck me, the amount of waste, bin after bin after bin. Like, I'd say, a quarter of my day was around managing cleanup crews, going to the various job sites, making sure we had permits for the bins to be on the street, making sure the filled up bins got picked up, all of the logistics and coordination around waste. And it blew my mind how much waste we were generating.
Right.
It
was and this is specifically
scary.
a retrofit renovation.
A lot of renovations, yeah.
Residential only? Or?
No, residential and light commercial. So we did we did some retail to commercial kitchen renovations. We did, various retail renovations. We did quite a few retail renovations, and then a lot of high-end residential renovations.
And you started to think where so much waste in all these jobs, and where it's going, and it's just being dumped in a landfill, and
and then the lack of skilled labor, and that's the other side of it. And the lack of skilled labor was creating more waste because they miscut that, or they bumped it into something and damaged it, or there was so much waste that was added to that just through unskilled labor in the industry. And a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I can do that, and all right, here, let's see what you do. And they definitely couldn't do it.
Right.
And so, going through the frustrations of trying to find skilled labor, trying to reduce waste, trying to increase our profitability for the company. I mean, waste costs ended up being about 30% of budget, between wasted materials, costs to manage the waste, the time we had for our cleanup crews to clean up between every sub-trade. The electricians come in, then the cleaners go in, then the plumbers come in, the cleaners go in. After every sub-trade, we had to put our cleaners through, because no matter how hard we tried, none of the sub-trades would clean up after themselves. We put penalties, we put all kinds of things into the contracts. They didn't care. They just pay the penalties and have us clean up the job site. They really didn't care. And so when you're working high-end renovation stuff, there was one job where we lapsed on that. We didn't realize we had to be in between two contractors. Somebody busted one of the glass railings, didn't say anything about it, and then they walked all over it, over top of this $80,000 floor. Yeah, my boss wasn't too happy about that one. So, and I mean, it's that kind of stuff where this low skilled labor starts creating all of these extra costs and creates all kinds of unnecessary waste. And so it really started getting my head going, like, how do we address these issues? How do we address the labor shortage? And how do we address the waste issues? And it's a big question. I mean, the North American market right now, something a lot of people don't realize is we have a catastrophic labor issue in front of us. The average age of a construction worker in North America is 60. Let that sink in for a second. The average age of a construction worker in North America is 60. 60. Yeah. He's got 5 years. I mean, a lot of these guys might work until they're 70, but their productivity starts dropping off too. What are we going to do in 5 years when half of our labor force is ready to retire and we don't have young people who want to come in to replace that labor force? You think the housing crisis is bad right now? We've just seen the tip of the iceberg. And so we've got a massive problem. And I saw this back in 2017. And so this is where my solution is now, like, okay, we have all this waste. Half of all resources extracted globally, half of everything goes into construction. So if we want to create a change, we see there's environmental issues, waste is unsustainable the way we're doing it. Well, let's take some of that waste, let's make a building product. And for me, the obvious answer was, let's make a no-cut system. How can we design a building system that requires no cutting? Eliminate the human error. Then we eliminate waste. Now, if we can take the principles of industry that we've known for the last 100 years, manufacturing principles, being able to get production lines set up, economies of scale, now we can mass produce products that don't require cutting, made completely from waste materials, that can speed up the construction industry. And the end goal is being automation friendly. So with our products, that's been something that we've kept in mind as we design and bring our products to market is, how do we make products that are easy for people to put together, eliminate human error, made of recycled materials, and then we can integrate automation into as we start to grow and move forward into the future. Because I think the only way that we're going to address this labor shortage within the construction industry is by having automation-friendly technologies. And you look at things like 3D printing, it's starting to grow in the construction industry, the 3D printing houses and all of this. Unfortunately, in the 3D printing world, there's a lot of misdirection in the advertising where they're like, oh, we 3D printed this house for $2,000.
Yeah.
And then they spent 6 months having skilled tradespeople frame in all the windows and doors and trim and all this other finishing stuff. Exactly. And then when they look at the actual price cost, like there's a village, like a community down in the States, and the initial news thing, they were like, oh, $4,000 each house. That was the cost for the 3D printing of the concrete walls. Total finished houses were still like $220,000, which was cheaper than, the $300,000 the neighborhood next door needed that was all stick frame. But it's not like it was a $4,000 house. That was misleading. That's just what the walls cost. And so I see a lot of this, the other side of 3D printing, where I think there's space for it in the market, absolutely. But how do you renovate that? Do you know anybody that owns a house that's never renovated it? I think that's a pretty big thing to think about when we're thinking about how we design structures going forward. People keep wanting to change it. Hey, you expanded your family. You want to add another room because you got another kid, or your parents are getting older, so you want to have a granny suite, or like there's all of these things that people just, or maybe you want to change the layout of it. You want a more open concept design now.
Well, same thing goes for ICI buildings too, right? I mean, a lot of companies have 7-year renovation terms, and might not be as rapid on a lot of public buildings, but they're still renovating them every 20, 30 years.
Yep. And the thing with the 3D printing is you typically have an interior and an exterior wall, right? You have your interior and your exterior, and then you've got a 3D geometry printed inside of that to give it structural stability, right? So you have a skin on one side and a skin on the other with like some sort of zigzag in between them. Now, if you want to renovate that zigzag has been computer generated to be the structural support. Now, if you want to cut through that, now what are you doing to the structural integrity of the building? Right, so that's where I explored 3D printing initially for a while, and some people still get confused. We got through some 3D prints to demonstrate our products. We are not 3D printing. We're using more known production models, things that work at scale, things that we can get economy of scale with, set up facilities that can just pump out products. But we're doing that in a way that then is modular, something that we can all put together. And I really think the future of construction is in modular construction. I mean, we see this, construction sees this already, like prefab concrete is happening more and more these days. Even things like tilt frame. Tilt frame is a form of modular construction. You pour these giant slabs and you stand them up and you stack them all together.
Maybe you don't think of it that way, but yeah, it kind of is, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think modularity is the key going forward because it makes it more accessible. It reduces the amount of labor. It reduces the amount of error. And it's more conducive of automation. And I think automation is going to play a big role in the next 10 years, especially as we start to see this shift in, social dynamics and demography, right? There's a changing age variance, people are getting older and we're having less kids and, all of these things are kind of converging over the next 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
I think it's important to look forward towards that future. And if we can use waste to build our structures, seems like a much better use for it than throwing it in some landfill or just burning it for energy and adding to the carbon issues.
So you see the labor shortage even across North America, and here specifically, I suppose, but as more of it's not just that we don't have enough bodies for all kinds of different tasks. It's more of a skilled labor problem.
Absolutely. I mean, with the construction trades, you can't just throw more bodies on a project and expect it's going to go quicker.
No,
that doesn't work. You need
right.
people who know how to use a tape measure, who know how to use a hammer, who know how to use a saw.
Understand how to make money in the process. And
if they haven't used a saw, I mean, they're liable to cut off fingers or other things. I've seen some pretty horrific accidents happen and, people with crazy scars from stuff that happens. I mean, working in the construction industry is a dangerous job. It's dangerous, dirty. You get bloody knuckles. You busted knees. There's a lot of injuries, and that's where a lot of the younger generations like, oh, I don't want to do that dirty work. Who wants to be a plumber and unplug somebody's like clogged up drains? It's gross. It is, but it needs to be done. So there's a bit of a dynamic there. I don't know. There's no silver bullet.
It's the money that lures, I think, a lot of people into the trades too. It's good money.
It is. It's getting better now because of the lack of people who are getting into it.
But it's good. Yeah. I suppose, it's good money, and it's, sidestepping a journey of, becoming a chartered accountant or a lawyer, a 5 to 8 year where you can make that same kind of money.
Yep.
But I guess you still, if you're going to be a good plumber, you still have to put in 8 years before you are one, right? Your apprenticeship journey and your...
And apprenticeship's important. Without that, you're just not going to have the level of experience. We do the similar thing with doctors too. You go through school, you don't just jump in and you're like a full-fledged doctor. You spend a bunch of time shadowing somebody else, And I think a lot of these skilled industries require that, but it creates more time to be able to actually fill in that skill gap, which is where, I think this is where we're looking at automation as an answer to the skill gap that we can bring in automation. It actually attracts a lot of the younger generation too, because working on robots is way cooler than just swinging a hammer, right? And so we're really hoping and leveraging on that future of enticing the young generation, not by just telling them, hey, you can make a bunch of money doing this old thing, but hey, here's a new way of doing this. It's better for the environment. Feel good about it. Mm-hmm. And you get to work on new high-tech, forward-thinking things, right? And that creates more excitement. It creates more passion. It's moving things forward. It's does somebody want to work at, the traditional factory line putting together a Ford, or do they want to work at Tesla working on robots and automation? Tesla is the one who has no problem. They got thousands of resumes. Meanwhile, a lot of the legacy companies are struggling to hire people, right? So we take that approach. It's we're bringing new technology to this market that is ripe for disruption. And I find, we're actually able to get a lot of people who are eager and excited to work on what we're doing. Mm-hmm. So.
And do you find people in the industry maybe don't quite understand this forward thinking? I'm not saying everyone, but do you run into that too? Whereas it's within 10 years maybe that this is going to be more the norm, but there's a long transition period, right? Change takes.
Well,
time.
I think I see some of it, but the majority of it is honestly pretty age dependent, and you tell within the first like 30 seconds of talking to somebody.
Yeah.
And we're in a transition period right now where a lot of the, my parents or a little bit older generation are getting to retirement age. They're starting to pass off the reins of the business to the younger generation. I'm 35, and, I see a lot of people in my age group starting to take over the family business or buying some other business, or, they're now becoming the business owners. And I think a lot of our generation also sees that there is a huge need for change. They're struggling finding the skilled labor. They're struggling dealing with the costs. They're struggling dealing with the time it takes to put stuff together. And from demos on our product, we have had a 70% conversion rate from contractors that we've met for demos that signed an LOI for products. So lots of people are very eager.
Right,
the number one question is, when can we get some?
It's not being sold yet, right?
Yeah. We will be, we're just at the cusp of it.
Yeah.
We've spent the last year and a half being 4 months away, but we are now.
Yeah, and just for our listeners, maybe just to kind of put it in context, is and not that you haven't, but simply or simple way of saying it was you're producing the technology, and selling this technology to wholesale companies to manufacture these blocks, which are a new method of construction, right? With no cutting, they're going together like Lego. You can use them for retaining walls, foundation walls, maybe even like a full building envelope for something under 3 stories.
Yeah, so I got into this initially, the idea, my background's in construction, building buildings. So I developed this brick and panel system. It's the first in the world brick and panel system, so the two work together. So you got a structural core block system. They all interlock, similar to, the building blocks you played with as a kid. Yeah. But unique to that is we have an entire paneling system. And the panel system cross-locks everything. So people who know anything about cabinetry or joinery understand what goes on with this.
Mortise and tenon.
A physical connection standpoint. We've got cross-lock on all of our joints. We've designed it all to be watertight. So, there's a rain screen idea built directly into our products to help keep water on the one side of it.
Right. You've got it filtering in between the assembly and the exterior finish.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Like any rain screen.
And so what we've done is it's not just a new product, but it's a new physical construction platform that's, laying the foundations for this plug and play future. That's a mix and match, and it's being able to construct things that are modifiable, keeping circular principles, and then we're not looking at we're not trying to dominate the whole market, produce everything ourselves, all of that stuff. There's too much capital intensity to it. So
similar to Tesla just selling their battery technology, right?
Exactly.
Kind of
So we're licensing it out. We've developed proprietary technology around our equipment, around the products, around our mix. And then we're going to be licensing this out internationally because there are so many places around the world that need this technology. And here in the North American market, because certification and all of that stuff is very expensive, we're going to probably be $1 million or more in to get fully certified for the construction industry here. Our beachhead market in the North American industry is in landscaping, so doing retaining walls, flower beds, sheds, and other non-occupied structures.
What about sidewalks? And these aren't pavers, right?
No,
we're not
doing so. Yeah, we're not doing pavers. We've had a lot of people. We've had a lot of people ask about that because there is another company in Africa that does like a sand and polymer mix.
Right, and that's similar to what's in these blocks, sand and polymer and different.
Well, we're not using any virgin materials, so we're not using sand. We're not using virgin sand in our product, which is very different. It's all recycled content. The only non-recycled content we may have in this are some stabilizers, some flame retardants, and some dyes that we use.
Right. So give us an idea of what waste materials have been recycled to make this block.
So it's primarily.
Is it 100 different things, or is it primarily?
So I mean, it's a blend of different polymers from a couple of industries, primarily from the agricultural and marine industries. We take a lot of marine plastic. We take a lot of agricultural plastic, things like feed bags, silage wrap, rope from the marine industry, feed bags again from aquaculture, some types of buoys and stuff, a lot of polyolefins. And then we combine that with mineralogical construction waste. And so we're able to produce, like the samples I have here are 100% recycled material, but then depending on the application, we may use certain additives to change or modify their physical parameters a bit.
Right. And so will a contractor, obviously, the last few years have been, around the technology. You've got a 4,000 square foot facility there in New Brunswick that you're, but will a contractor, once this stuff is able to be sold, need to be a licensed installer, or
So we will.
It's a simplified method of construction, but still going to have some knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, similar to how ICF or something, you can go get your certification and training
ICF's
to
a good
do
analogy,
it. Yeah, I'd say this is like the next evolutionary step from ICF. We eliminate the cutting and we eliminate the pouring, but you still just lock it all together in a similar idea. We take a lot of the steps out of this because it's a very unique product. It's innovative as far as form, function, and material. But the idea of, we have these blocks and we lock them all together, but now it's so much quicker, right? With an ICF, you've got to cut all your blocks, make sure they line up, make sure all your seams close up. You still got to do all your rebar and everything tied into there. Then you got to pour it at certain levels. You get cold seaming, and there's a lot of issues around ICF to actually make it work properly. Mm-hmm. Something like our system is so much simpler to put together. It eliminates a lot of these other things, and the long-term vision is automation with this, right?
Right. So will let's say a residential building is speccing this product in the foundation. For the full foundation, would it be a matter of like taking the Revit model or BIM and then just kind of all the blocks are going to be manufactured to fit together in the certain jogs or the exact shape of and there's no cutting, right? So it's going to take that's part of the integration.
Yep, exactly. And we're actually going to be developing a plugin that'll go into the Revit or AutoCAD ecosystem as well. Actually connecting with a couple of people there, so nice. I'm not sure how much I can say right now, but yeah. We're making progress and in grounds with that. We're actually part of the Autodesk Foundation, which is really exciting because we're amazing clean tech, and they're super excited about what we're doing.
So you're kind of on the verge of a breakthrough. It sounds like.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've been making some really big connections over the last little while, and bringing some real powerhouses into our circle of influence.
So when do you see, or when do you hope to see, the first PLAEX block being used in a retaining wall, even, or like?
Hopefully next week. Maybe by the end of this week.
And that might be somewhere in North America, or will that be here?
It'll be in the Dieppe area, Moncton Dieppe area. We've got a couple of projects right now. We've got very limited production.
You're manufacturing there right now, and you're selling direct to some contractors.
We're doing a couple of direct to customer projects to showcase the product, the capacity of it.
Right.
We've kind of got a 3-phase business approach. Right now we're in demonstration, then there's going to be scale up, and then there's full licensing. So right now we're doing our own production. It's slow, it's tedious. We're working on prototype equipment that's, not up to industrial snuff per se. Like we're working through the kinks of production at the moment, getting a lot of data, tons and tons of data. Then we're doing our first demonstration projects this fall. We've got now pushing close to 250 units produced. We're going to be installing those over the next couple of weeks. We've created a bunch of content around that. And then over the course of the winter, we've now got some more capital coming in. Raising capital has been like pulling teeth over the last few years. I founded the company actually in 2020. The idea started in 2017, but I incorporated in 2020. 2020 was just it was a mess of a year for everyone. I had $200,000 in investment lined up that vaporized in March. And so, January I started in, February I got incorporated, March my investment vaporized, and then I spent the rest of the year trying to figure out how am I going to do this without money. And, I got some government funding, a couple of little grants and, some subsidies and, was able to survive through it.
It's a heavy capital endeavor, though, whenever you're putting time and effort and payroll and money into something that, you're not really, no revenue stream for 3 years.
I didn't get paid at all. 2020 was just cost a lot of money. Then 2021, I got into our first accelerator, actually through UMB in New Brunswick. UMB Fredericton does Energia.
Oh, I was going to
It's
say,
a
is that
startup.
part of the offsite construction program or something?
It's
there,
connected.
but-
We're actually working with them doing the testing on our products.
Okay.
So we're working. They actually did a publication recently on our product. So we're moving through the ASTM standard testing with them. But through Energia, we were actually able to get our initial larger chunk of capital that came in. There was a substantial grant through ACOA, and there was an investment through NBIF. So they invested.
Okay.
They actually have equity in the company.
Nice.
That allowed me to hire my first 3 employees. Then September 2021, we got involved with IRAP. Was able to give me a subsidy and actually started to be able to get paid, which was nice. About 2 years in, I finally started getting a paycheck, but heavily subsidized, and still most of it goes straight back into the company. But things have started moving forward, and really since then, by the end of 2021, it was December 31st, 2021. We're like, come back. We had our Christmas holidays. We're like cramming, working on machinery, trying to get everything done. And then finally everything was together on the 31st. We're like, all right, we're not leaving until we get our first brick. And then, we made our first 2 or 3 bricks that day. And I got some photos of that day. It was akin to my first kid, It was just like the amazing moment of hey, we actually have a brick. And if you look back, they look like crap compared to what we're producing now. But it was that milestone, and since then things have really been taking off, and we've made huge advances in our ability to process material, huge advances in our data that we've been able to generate, and all of the metrics, and
which is
knowing
really important.
what exactly needs to go into it to make it the best that it can be, and be able to modify it so that it can actually be manufactured easier.
Yeah.
And there's so many variables in it. Like getting into manufacturing, I built houses. There's complexity in building and managing and construction, but those seem small now compared to manufacturing.
Right. Yeah, because just what it takes to get a product on site in ICI construction. Once you have a data sheet that's approved, with the building code and architects, and get it spec'd. And
Yeah.
Well,
you start to understand
journey.
things like, Elon Musk's comments about, scale up hell, trying to get manufacturing going when he was trying to produce a Tesla and stuff. It's you go through that phase of going from proof of concept to scale production is probably one of the hardest feats any human can try to make it through. The number of hours, the number of tasks, we joke, we raised over $1 million. We just created 1 million jobs for ourselves, but but you have to put in that work to get there. It's if you're not willing to put in the work, you're never going to reap the results. And that's where other people have been like, oh, I'm surprised nobody's done that. It's like, yeah, because it's actually really hard to do.
Yeah, that's why no one's done it yet.
Yeah.
So what made you? And I want to go back to what you said about having your first child. Was it your son who'd be 3 or 4 years old now?
Daughter,
Or 6 years old. Your daughter. Okay.
Yeah.
So I feel like a lot of people like that sometimes is maybe what stops them from, having that, well, call it extra pressure or whatever, or what was it about having your first child that made you want to make the leap? Because you obviously had been thinking about it before. You've seen these problems and you wanted to solve a problem. That's mostly what entrepreneurship is, when you come down, simplify it right to the.
Well, I didn't feel comfortable doing what I was doing anymore. I enjoy building. I enjoy creating. The sense of accomplishment that comes from working on a project and then having this finished build that looks beautiful is unmatched. That's where I very much encourage anybody listening right
satisfaction.
now. You want a sense of satisfaction, get into the trades, because when you finish that job, nothing beats that sense of satisfaction.
Yeah.
But seeing the waste, seeing the difficulty in the labor, realizing if I kept on the trajectory I was on, I was going to be stuck in a repetitive cycle. And I realized I had
You didn't
more,
want to do the same thing for the next 30 years.
Yeah. I realized I had more to contribute. My mind is...
That's more what it was.
I have a bit of a unique mind. I'm able to process problems very quickly. I can see a situation, and I I'm one of these few people, I guess. I didn't realize how rare it was, but the ability to actually visualize, and I can, it's like sometimes it feels like I'm wearing an AR headset. Like I can actually visualize things in 3D and see patterns and blocks and move it. And like I have full control over a visual imagination that's like very visceral and visual.
You probably found that out more about yourself once you took the leap over the past 6 years doing this, right? That's.
I mean, I tried making a living as an artist before I got into all this too, but there's reality to the starving artist thing. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
This is my art now.
Yeah. So that's interesting that you had the courage to take the leap after having your first child.
You
not to say there's ever a good time. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I maybe that's a wrong assumption that a lot of people stay what they're doing just because they not that they're stuck, but they don't want to take the risk because they've got more. It's easier if you're single or have a spouse and no children to make a change, right?
It would be easier, but it's also easier to be distracted. So when I was single and I didn't have that, I was enjoying life. I spent years traveling and working. I traveled all across Canada, and I worked in different companies around the country, learning all kinds of different skills. But I worked to support my time enjoying and exploring nature. I wasn't working necessarily to improve the work that I was doing.
Right. So having a child born into the world like that's something where you're taking responsibility for sustainability, and that's part of it too then, right?
Yeah, it was more than
your
just
little part
me.
to make things a little better for your kids. Right?
Yeah, it was more than just me. It's like now I've got to think about like, okay, what am I leaving behind? Right? Not just what can I amass so that I can, go on this next hiking trip or go on this next vacation or, like that was kind of the mentality before. It was like earn enough so I can do the things that I want to do. And I'd set this goal of like, I want to do this. And it was very kind of self-centered, like a bit of a hedonistic lifestyle.
Yeah, I think we all are maybe until those things happen, right? and
then I have kids, and it's like, I wish that I had been smarter when I was younger, when I didn't have kids and I had more time, that I could have hustled way harder. But the reality is that like that hustle wasn't going to come without some reason to make me hustle that, and once I had kids, it was like, okay, I got to think about what I'm leaving behind, and do I feel comfortable working these jobs where I'm creating endless amounts of waste on every project? And it's like, that just isn't sustainable. It's like my kids say, like,
you had to do something about it, right? Most because everybody sees the same problems. It's just not only maybe 1% of people actually step out and take it upon themselves to do something.
This is true, and this is also where we see, this is the element of success. If you want to be successful, you got to be that 1% that's actually going to put in the work to do something different. Yeah. Has it been easy? No, it's been very hard. Yeah. I've gone through a lot having to do this,
and then you'll have a breakthrough in a couple of years, and people will say, "How did you do that? I could have done that." They don't see the last 10 years of hell. So, well, not hell, but
many.
Really tough.
There's been lots of 30-hour shifts, and it's you got to just work through the night to get it done so that we can hit that next milestone by a specific date that people are expecting it to be hit by, and frankly, a lot of people are just not willing to put in that kind of work, and then they wonder why they don't get anywhere as well.
It's understandable. Right? At the same time, it's like there's not really any easy way, is there?
No
shortcuts.
If it was easy, everybody'd be doing it, right?
Yeah.
And it's just not. And like building it up, getting things scaled up is a challenge. And for me, having the kids made it worth that challenge, right? It's like, no, I've got something, I want to make their life better. I want to make sure that they have a future. And, if I'm looking at scalable options to make the world a better place, when I look at the construction industry and I started looking at the data around it, what is actually going on, when I saw the bigger picture outside, I had my bubble and I realized there was problems. I realized there's waste and labor issues. But when I started looking at the broader picture, getting into this and defining, what is the problem that we're solving here? And that's something, through business accelerators, there's been a lot of that, clearly define the problem. And the size of the problem struck me so much more that I'm like, okay, this is absolutely what I'm doing. There's not even a question anymore.
It's a bigger problem than people
so
even
big.
think, even though it's on everyone's minds and talked about on our podcast all the time, the labor shortage.
Yeah.
So
And
Doesn't
I mean,
matter
you
what
think about-
guest is on. It could be an engineering firm owner or PM. Could be an architect. Or could be a supplier. It's all labor shortage.
Yep.
Everywhere.
Yep.
And everything.
And that and the waste, like, I mean, half of all resources extracted globally go into construction. Half of everything. 40% of global CO2 emissions come from the construction industry and building operations. That's massive.
Yeah, so
they say we need like a certain percentage reduction. Like, that entire percentage reduction could come from the construction industry if we were smart about it, without ever having to worry about any of the other things we're doing. We could solve these climate things if we were just smarter with how we build. And that's something a lot of people seem to overlook. There's a lot of focus on, the evils of oil. And, it's probably not good to be burning a bunch of oil and burning coal. Like, that does seem like a bad idea.
Fossil
It's smoggy,
fuels
it's sooty,
are
it's stinky,
yeah,
yes.
Bad.
But aside from that, like, fossil fuels have gotten us to where we are. And we can't just switch off of them tomorrow, unfortunately. It'd be nice.
Yeah.
I have the podcast Net Zero Construction. Like, I am on board with reducing all of those things. But like, we have to be smart. Yeah, I mean, it's not like we can just switch it off tomorrow. Like, I still have a truck. Like, can I afford to go out and buy an electric truck? No. And now I know a guy who owns one, and he can't even tow all the stuff he needs to with it. He's still got to have his fossil fuel vehicle to be able to work with. He has his electric truck for his personal life. But for like industry, there's still huge challenges there. So I think, if we're looking at ways of like, how can we create impact? How can we make the world better? How can we solve some of these issues we're creating? Maybe I'm a little biased, but my personal belief is, half of everything goes into construction. Well, maybe we should look at the thing that's consuming half of all resources and see if we can do that better.
I'm saying, like, on your website, there's a stat, it's 2.2 billion tons of waste. And like you just said, only half is recycled. So it's like there's this plethora of...
If
that.
Yeah.
So it's like there's this whole, which you're tapping into just in your little niche way. But it's like...
And I mean, if we can... So we did some stuff. If we can address 10% of the waste that we could use in our mix, we could annually produce about 10 billion bricks. The scale of it just hurts my head. If you think about like amount of plastic, so it's just plastic, for example. We produce, pushing close now to about 400 million tons of plastic produced annually around the world. You want to visualize that. 1 ton of plastic is about 3 4x4x4 foot pallets. Your standard pallet, you're about 4 foot by 4 foot. That, 4 feet high, one of those big tote bags or something full of plastic. 1 ton of plastic is 3 of those pallets. And we're producing about 400 million tons. So that's about 1.2 billion pallets of plastic. That's a number so big you can't even visualize it, right? The scale of the problem is so big, the market is so massive, and to me it just makes absolute sense. It's like we've got these massive problems. We've also got the biggest market for materials, which is construction. Let's try to offset some of that resource extraction and use things we already extracted, use things we already put energy into. The big issues with construction are, well, a lot of it rots. Concrete leaches away. It gets weak over time because it absorbs water, and the water demineralizes the concrete. It actually absorbs and pulls all of the minerals that give it structural stability. It pulls it out of it. That's why concrete starts to crumble over time. Wood, it gets wet, it rots.
That's happening right over here in the parkade, actually, down here.
Yeah.
Concrete's falling off the ceiling and the parkade's closed.
Yep. Yeah, and it's these things are problems. And then we look at things like plastics. What's the problem with plastics? Well, the problem with plastic in the environment is it lasts almost forever, like 500 to 700 year lifespan to break down in the environment. Let's see. A problem of something lasting too long, problem of something not lasting long enough. Take the problem, and all of a sudden it becomes a solution when you use it in the right way. And so that's where, our composite takes advantage of the strengths of the polymer, wherein, it can last for infinitely long periods of time. It's not damaged by water. Nothing's going to eat or rot at it. It's not going to mold or mildew. And then we use also the structural strength and integrity that you would get from a concrete. So we get, similar compression values to a traditional concrete. There are high engineered concretes that can get more compression than we can with our mix, but we're not doing skyscrapers with this.
Yeah, this isn't something that's going to go beyond like 2 or 3 stories.
Yeah, potentially, and I can't, we're still doing engineering, we're still doing testing, probably would max out at around 4 stories. Maybe, and it depends on what we can get with certification and testing, but we're, upwards of 20 megapascal compressive strength, so it's significant. Canadian building standards minimum is 15 megapascal. So, and with mix variations, we're able to start, we're really honing in on creating that consistency within it. I think right now our landscape mix, we're targeting about 17 megapascal consistent strength, but we can get more with certain mix additives. So, yeah.
Wow. And so, like, it's designed so you can have your electrical, your different rough-ins routed through. Just like
yeah. So, I mean, our initial design concept is having channeling in it. But as we're progressing further within it, I think a lot of the integration is going to go into the panels. So you have these just monolithic structural blocks. You build up your wall, and then into the panel system, we'll end up having a fully plug-and-play panel system that'll contain outlets preset into the panels, or have solar integrated into the panels, and have no wire systems done up. So just click, 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 and it'll have connection points on it that are just integrating it, plug-and-play system. Similar to actually how
you're eliminating labor for a lot of trades there.
That's what we're trying to do, because I mean the labor just isn't there. The labor that exists is going to have to focus on renovating existing buildings, and if we can eliminate the need to bring in new labor for all the new buildings, I mean in Canada especially, we have such a massive opportunity in the market. Canada's been bringing in a lot of people, and there's nothing implicitly wrong with that. I think it's great. We have tons of immigrants, so we work with a lot of them. Great people. But we need the infrastructure to house people. And when we're bringing in 1 million people a year and we're producing less than 200,000 dwellings a year, we get a problem, right? And so I think that going forward, the skilled trades are going to be really focused on renovation. And I think the future, the new construction, is where automation stands the biggest opportunity. Right? And if we can subsidize and offset that new construction using automation, we're going to reduce the stress on the labor market that we have. And then we'll also reduce the stress on the housing market as well. The issues with housing is like, try to get a new permit approved to build a house, try to find somebody to build it for you. These things are driving the housing crisis we see, which are driving the cost of housing and all of this other stuff. Yeah. And so, the solution is finding better ways to build. Can we do more cost effective? Can we do lower labor requirements? Can we do longer lasting buildings? And this is where I think we're at this perfect nexus point now. That combined with the fact that a lot of the younger generation is taking over on a lot of these trade companies, we see most people from our age group, from, the 30 to 40 age group, are very eager to start implementing new technology, because they realize we have to work to help manage our environment. We got to do better as stewards of our planet. And we also need to find ways to get past the labor shortages. I think we're at a perfect nexus point with what we're doing.
We'd like to welcome our newest partner here at AC Media, the Freeman Group. Freeman Group Financial works closely with business owners, professionals, and retirees as their primary custodial wealth manager. The Freeman Group is targeting contractors and people in the construction industry as they move forward. The Freeman Group is a great choice for all your financial wealth management with a local touch. We look forward to having the Freeman Group on our podcast several times throughout the next 12 months with specific financial educational episodes. Soublier Trinity is Atlantic Canada's newest drywall and interiors contractor. Soublier Trinity is a joint effort between Trinity Energy Group, local Division 7 experts for over 17 years in Atlantic Canada, and Soublier Constructors, a highly reputable commercial interiors company based in Ottawa since 1986. Soublier Trinity has been performing work on commercial projects throughout Atlantic Canada this year, while planning for more growth in the years to come. We'd like to thank our partner, Pivot Accounting. If you're a contractor or small to medium-sized business owner in the construction industry and are looking to outsource your payroll, accounting services, and financial needs, Pivot Accounting is a great option. You think there's you talked earlier about different demographics and different generations and how you could tell right away. Do you think some people in the older generation maybe that still have 10 years left, like let's say they're 50 or 60 and they're still going to work for another 10 or 20 years, and they didn't grow up in the same era, as you and I, my mid-30s as well, 37.
They still played with something similar as a
kid.
No,
yeah, and they do.
And so they a lot of them still, like,
yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
A lot of them still, they see our product and they're just like, this is cool.
Yeah, they like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, it's not like, you know, change takes a long time. New
does.
things sometimes can be a threat. I think even sometimes the construction industry itself is kind of interesting in the way that it's like this somehow is like you've got all these different trades and craftsmen and, you know, guys that got men and women that are working, you know, really hard. But there's like this also like there's huge wave of like innovation and technology like mixed in the same, all in the same space. And I guess the point I was trying to make earlier is, do you think sometimes the older generation, even though they're so valuable in the way that they can train and, you know, with the hands-on experience and, you know, there are lots of jobs that they have under their belt, but the technology side is a little bit threatening, you know, just because of the era that is so fast moving, right? I mean, it's so, even people that are 10 years younger than us, and obviously you're a lot more techie than I would be, but, you know, they're at a whole different level even, right, than we are. And then somebody who's 60, you know, so sometimes I think, you know, as skilled, a lot of the skilled workers and leaders and that are older that we need, you know, just as much as we need new technology sometimes, but they've got to use it, right? And they're a little bit, maybe they're a little hesitant. It just doesn't come as naturally to them, right? Do you ever think about that, or does that ever kind of cross your, you know, your in the space that you're in? Has that ever?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there is. So, you know, before I got into this, when I first found out I was having a kid, I actually started a consultant group that was helping construction companies integrate construction management software. You know, that allows, you know, the integration of like clock in, clock out right on the job site with GPS tags, have your drawings there, and you can annotate right on your phone on the drawings, and the engineer gets those annotations right away. Makes things so streamlined, budgets integrated into it, you can do POs through it, change orders through it, all of that stuff integrated into this management software. But yeah, that was where it was challenging with the older generation. Half of them didn't even have a smartphone. You get the old flip phone still, you know? Yeah. So like, as far as integrating... I wish I had
a flip phone too, right? I mean,
so as far as integrating the apps and the digital side of the technology, yeah, there's massive challenges there with the older generation. Yeah. With what we're doing, beyond the initial, like, is it going to hold up question,
right?
We kind of have a foot in the door. You know, it's familiar. It looks like something that they used to enjoy. You know, it's fun because of that. You know, it's not. Yeah. We're coming at it with
doesn't
a
look
unique
like something
angle
from outer space. You know, or something like futuristic.
They can understand it. They look at it. It's like if you have any experience in joinery, you have any experience like playing with blocks as a kid, you have, or your kids or your grandkids or whatever, right? People see this and they know how it works, generally speaking. You know, there's nuances of how you may put it together that are very specific to this, but generally speaking, people understand when they look at it what they need to do with it. The other aspect is it looks familiar. You know, there are other products on the market like Bifusion. They have, you know, these compressed polymer blocks. They're a pure polymer. Their compression, they get like, you know, 800 PSI versus our like 3,000 PSI.
Right.
So, I mean, it's a totally
but
different
not as
product
structurally
class.
sound.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know.
So does that mean it can be used for maybe a retaining wall but not a foundation? Or
yeah,
kind of
exactly.
Thing? Yeah.
Exactly. But, I mean, you look at products like that, and it just looks like squished together garbage. You know, so they have a harder, they're still getting successful, they're gaining traction, but their product creates more resistance because it doesn't look familiar. Our product has this unique advantage where it looks like concrete. Like you look at that, it's like, oh yeah, that looks like a concrete block, but it's way tougher. And now we have all these value adds to, we have the starting foundational of it looks like concrete and it looks like something you played with as a kid. So it's fun and it's familiar. Now we lay on all of the value adds to this product of, you know, it's designed to be watertight, it's designed to last longer, it's more impact resistant, We go through a whole list of benefits on it.
Yeah.
But the foundation of it, when people first impression of it, it looks familiar. That's key.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think that's one of our big advantages.
Is this essentially like a step towards like replacing concrete?
I mean, there's still always going to be a place for concrete. I think it's just offsetting part of its production, right? Let's be more choosy about where we use concrete. I don't think there's any chance of fully replacing concrete in our
No,
world.
it goes back to your comment about fossil fuels.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you're not going to replace it, but I guess a better way to term that would be like a step away from concrete for certain structures, certain
I think it's being
smaller building types, like
Yeah,
where
I
there
think-
wouldn't be a concrete element if you're using this, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, even our current specifications for installation, we still use concrete. So you do a traditional footing, right? So you dig your trench, you put your concrete footing in. Now our products bolt down to that footing. Now we may develop a product as we expand that'll replace that footing as well using our composite. But, you know, to get a nice, smooth, leveled out, finished surface to start building up from, concrete's very useful for that. It's liquid, you pour it in, it levels everything out, you just float it off, and now you got a nice, flat, level surface as long as you did a good job building your frames. That's something, our material isn't something that you're going to be pouring on site. They're preformed industrial production blocks. So concrete still has a role to play, but it's just reducing its use, right? And using it more wisely for the applications that its physical properties are best suited for. And I think that's, for me, in doing this, it's like really looking at materials and like, what is the best use case for this material that takes advantage of its physical and chemical characteristics, right? Like I said earlier,
Like I said, landscaping is kind of
yeah,
it's the big one right now.
it's our beachhead market. It just gets us to market. A lot easier regulatory hurdles.
Yeah, but
You know,
do you see the same technology being used for? I mean, you've got the block, you know, innovation. It's you know, for foundation and that kind of stuff. But do you see it being used for other elements too? Like, I mean, we talked about pavers there for a minute, but like even maybe there's all kinds of other things. I mean, the technology is helping extract from that. Like you said, you can't even visualize the amount of stuff that isn't being recycled.
Yeah.
So there's maybe no telling where the technology.
So I mean,
could
yeah,
go.
we are exploring other product applications as well. We will expand our ecosystem. So I mean, if you look at you know, things like Lego, they started with 3 bricks, right? 3 basic bricks. Now they have thousands of product SKUs, thousands upon thousands of product SKUs. So in a similar fashion, you know, we're starting out with a very basic product line. As we grow, we will expand that product line.
Right.
And incorporate, yes, there are several use case examples that we are in some study development and conversations with other industries to use our composite for. But we have steered, so the paver thing, we've steered away and we've made an ethical business decision to not make pavers. We will not produce pavers or out of our product. The reason being, it is a polymer base that is going into this. It uses polymers in its constitution. A pathway or a walking way, you're going to inevitably have a higher level of wear. There's constant friction that's going to be going on, foot traffic or driving traffic on it. And roads already produce 40% of global microplastics. So if you consider that you're putting a
You're not
product,
solving as big of a problem there.
Exactly, exactly. Now, when we're making walls, now we can encase that material. That's locked away for generations.
Mm-hmm.
It's there. If we need to take it apart, you know, due to the nature of our thing, we can still take it apart. It's circular in design.
Right.
But we're not exposing our material to high wear because that's not its material strength. Yes, it's durable. It is more durable than a lot of things, but I would rather you did your pavers out of real stone or concrete or clay, which when that breaks down to smaller pieces doesn't have an environmental effect the same way. When we encase this, we make walls out of it, we've got paneling, we've got other things. Now it's not being subjected to the same mechanical stresses. Now we're actually able to use the strengths of that material property. And it's not to say like, yeah, there are companies making pavers out of, you know, plastic stuff, but we just didn't feel that it was the most ethical use case for our material. And, you know, the market in wall systems is massive. So,
Yeah.
right.
It's important where you keep your focus, right?
Exactly. It's very important to focus in on niche.
Okay.
And, you know, as we expand product line, we may look at other applications as well, but pavers is one that we've specifically been like, that doesn't seem like the best use case for our product.
And so what are your goals for the next couple of years. You mentioned like you're hoping maybe next week or as early as next week, or,
Yeah.
or you know, sometime real soon that you start to, you know, start turning revenue and making sales, and then, you know, it might take off pretty quick.
Yeah, it's definitely looking that way. So I mean,
How do you feel about that? I mean, it's like,
I'm excited.
yeah, I mean, obviously it's exciting, but you're also thinking like, am I prepared on all other fronts if it's to capture the opportunity that might be there? Maybe I'm not. Maybe I've undershot what it's going to be like. If it is that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'd say our biggest issue is, or my biggest concern is being able to meet the demand that we've found.
To meet the demand, yeah.
The demand for what we're doing is hard to conceive. The products almost sell themselves. The technology we have, we don't spend any money on advertising. It's all organic growth.
It's not like you're backward integrating, or like you're focused on your one piece of this autonomous.
Yeah, and
so
we have people from around the world that are reaching out to us on a weekly basis, like, hey, how can I get involved? So, you know, when I was in Switzerland, one of the big things that we were doing is we're looking for, you know, mentorship around international licensing, mentorship and potentials around OEM production. So getting a manufacturer that can help produce our proprietary equipment that then produces our products. And that's why we're really adopting the licensing model, because we do see such a huge demand. If we were to try to manage it all ourselves, it would be next to impossible. And the other thing is, you know, we are in a path towards B Corp certification. We want to be an ethical business. And, you know, we're addressing 9 out of the 17 sustainable development goals. And I think, you know, one of those is addressing poverty. And we're looking to commodify waste, you know, taking things that are considered of no value and creating value out of them, and allowing people to generate income off of that. And so, you know, for us, it's a lot about local ownership is important. And so by licensing our technology, we can have local owners actually generating revenue in their local economies off of things that would otherwise be completely valueless, garbage, as they say. And we're able to take that garbage and turn it into essentially gold. You know, we're turning it into a value-added product.
So you see your tech being used in other countries, like in the near future?
Very quickly.
And helping with poverty, like I'm thinking about some Habitat for Humanity locations where they're helping build homes in all these different methods, right? They're using old brick and mortar, and you know, that's how they're building a lot of these homes in some of these countries that they're.
So as it stands right now, we've got seven MOUs signed to license our technology internationally. It's looking like Nigeria may be one of the first ones. Hoping all the geopolitics cool down there, because there's massive opportunities. We've got several partners in Nigeria that we've been in discussions with for quite a while now. Very eager to deploy our technology there. But we're not just looking there. So, I mean, you know, being in Switzerland, we got a lot of leads on European potentials. We've got one signed in England, in Jamaica, and Brazil, and Indonesia, and the Philippines, and Singapore, and India, and just recently another one in Sri Lanka. And, you know, there's people from around the world, all kinds of, like, we have a pipeline of a lot. Right now we have 7 that are signed, and we're really moving forward on those to move those forward. But yeah, scaling up quick enough is going to be the biggest challenge. And, you know, that's where we're in discussions now with OEM partners, because we have proprietary machinery. It's a very unique composite. We had to develop unique machinery to be able to produce it at scale. So these are the things that we're working through right now, is like scaling that up so that we've got the right people and companies backing us, that hopefully by the end of next year, we'll have a minimum of 1 international deployment for sure. Ideally, we're targeting 3 international deployments by the end of next year.
How important is it for your business of your nature with the patent deal?
We have a lot.
Yeah, so especially when it comes to, like, well, you know, if you were to get into litigation with someone seeing it, that's a great idea. I mean, anybody could, not anybody, but there's obviously going to be opportunities to kind of copy in a way what you're doing, and that's going to happen to some degree eventually, right? You're in such a big.
Yeah, I think you know, the chance of some copycat there. Now it is extremely difficult. Our material, it's taken us a while to get here, because processing this material in the way that makes it.
Couldn't a large corporation, if an idea is that good with that much of a market, or an endless amount of resource, Couldn't they take, couldn't they couldn't that happen? Couldn't that situation
So, I mean, what I've found within the industry is people are more keen on the license. It can be cheaper in the long run. It's better to work together.
Yeah.
And this is part of why we're going the licensing model as well, is we're not trying to, cut other people's grass. We want to work together. We want to collaborate. And I mean, that's, goal 17 out of the Sustainable Development Goals is collaboration to meet the goals.
Right.
Right. And that's a big focus of what we're doing as well.
Ethics and best business practice involved there, right?
Exactly. And this is where we're getting B Corp certified, and we're really moving forward. We want to work with people. If you're involved in something and you want to move this forward, we want to work with you. We're not looking to, own the entire thing. We want to bring this technology and make it accessible. And so I think that helps. We have a lot of people who are involved in the industry who have reached out to us who are like, I love what you're doing. Can we work together? And we do have a robust IP portfolio. We've got filings in over 200 countries and spend way too much money on IP. But, it's important as we license. We have global coverage on our IP, right? And so that's a key strategy that we've taken. But we're looking to share in that. Right? We're not looking to be the manufacturer. We're looking to license that technology and work with the local manufacturers. Yeah. And I think that creates a much more ethical business model. I think it also creates more opportunity for success, because if the business owners are local, we're not just some outsider. I'm not just some white guy coming in trying to make a bunch of money off of them. I'm trying to help bring a technology to them to help revitalize their local economy. Yeah. And a large percentage of those profits,
nothing from their
a large percentage of those profits are staying local, right? They're taking local waste, turning it into a product using local labor to install projects locally, right? And so it's keeping that in a local setting and generating wealth off of something that would otherwise just literally be landfilled, right? So I think we have a massive opportunity to create wealth where there would have been none, right? And so that, the complexity of what we do from a mechanical standpoint is also a limiting factor because it's contrary to a lot of the conventions of industry. Yeah. I came at it from a unique perspective, and sometimes that's very useful. A lot of the industry are like the horses with the blinders on back in the day, this is the way we've done it, so this is the way we're going to do it. Yeah. And this crazy outside idea, look, oh no, that's not going to work. Yeah. Are you sure about that? Oh yeah, it's not going to work. This is the way we've done it. This is the way we're doing it. And so, and I understand that because innovation's expensive.
Well, especially in construction where, if you know yourself, if you're a contractor, I mean, you've got to be in it to make money.
Oh, yeah.
You can't make money when you're taking on all these different ideas and thinking too much. You still have a job to do and a deadline to meet. And it's hard.
Oh, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, pick and choose your spots,
And this is where there's the wild minds such as myself that, we take on that risk and push through and forge through. And,
it's blown my
I'm taking on
wow.
the side of the innovation while other people keep moving forward, right? And
Yeah, but you'll reap the benefits.
Hoping so.
Yeah.
I mean, that's for me. The biggest thing is I want to see this technology deployed around the world. I don't want to see pictures of giant piles of waste anymore. It's like my kid said. It's like I'm like Wall-E, right? And it's I'm trying to make sure the world doesn't end up like it did in Wall-E. We need to solve this problem first. Yeah. Let's not leave it until there's literally mountains bigger than skyscrapers of garbage. Let's start addressing it, and let's make our not quite the skyscrapers, but make our buildings out of stuff, right? Yeah. There's a huge amount of potential. I mean, you start looking into stuff. I think the recycling industry is probably one of the biggest opportunities that our generation sees right now. I think there's AI, automation, and recycling. Those are the two biggest opportunities. And maybe space. Space, I would say maybe be the third largest sectors of growth we're going to see over the next 50 years. Because there should be, if we're going to live in a net zero, sustainable, circular economy and all of these other buzzwords, that means there's no garbage. And when we're producing billions of tons And that 2.2 billion tons of waste, that's only like 30% of global waste.
Like
you
that's
think
in the
there's like
construction industry specifically?
There's
that,
just in general, in general, there's like 6 billion tons of waste generated globally every year. That's a big business opportunity, right? And so I think the biggest things is and that's where there's things like another startup I'm friends with, they're doing composite recycling, recycling like boats and windmills and stuff like that. And, there's battery recycling and there's, food recycling and I think all of these industries are going to see massive growth over the next while,
right,
especially with more, economic pressures. Being able to recycle materials that we've already embodied energy into is the most efficient way to do it, right? It's like lithium is very expensive and, environmentally costly to extract from the natural environment. But if you take batteries, you grind those up, now you've got concentrate.
Yeah.
There's so much more value in that raw material of a battery. Yeah, but I think, this is something that our generation faces now is like, how do we solve waste issues?
Yeah.
And if we're going to be circular, if we're going to be moving forward, if we're going to actually, reach the dream of being a multi-planetary species, we've got to learn how to manage our resources. And if we extract and extract and extract, and then when we're done with it after the first iteration, we just throw it away, I mean, eventually the whole world ends up like Wally's World, and it's just a mountain of garbage. And humanity can do better than that. I have a lot of faith. There's a lot of amazing people doing a lot of amazing things, and
for sure there is.
Yeah.
How do you find managing your time? As a founder and CEO, and this is kind of your baby. It's your idea, and you've got employees here locally. You've got all these things happening in different countries where you're doing pitch competitions, and then there's people wanting to be part of what you're doing and partner with it and get involved from all over the world. Just you personally, like what your time is spent on most valuable, obviously like front facing these opportunities, make sure that the money's coming in, right? Raising capital. Do you ever battle with like being, what it is your time needs to be spent on, or like is it because you come from a construction background, so you're not really, probably assuming you're not doing a lot of task oriented stuff where you're working hands on for a week maybe just to give your mind a rest, or what, like you're navigating a lot of stuff there. I'm just wondering, like personally, speak to that a little bit.
As far as like time management, it's a challenge. I think it's a challenge for any founder. Being involved in accelerators, connecting with a lot of other entrepreneurs, time management and founder life is challenging, and I think you have to give up a lot in order to be successful in entrepreneurship. There's a lot of personal time. There's a lot of sacrifices from like how often do I get to see my friends anymore? It's a lot less. And I think those are the things that, you have to be willing to do what it needs to be done to make it through the milestones. Yeah, I mean, I've gotten better at it over the last while. The challenge over the last couple of years is definitely, like you said, like how do you get that stuff out of your head and then convey it? So, creating policies,
structure,
building our scripts, making sure that all of that information that is in my head gets put down on paper, so other people can be conveyed that information. Teamwork is so crucial. That said, though, I mean, most founders, you're going to be doing twice as much as anybody else on your team, and
you can't
expect people to do more, right?
It does come down to expectations.
Yeah, and that's where I've learned over the last while is like to lower my expectations of others and be kind, right? I
think that starts with being kind to yourself. Do you find that hard to do?
I mean, sometimes you got to be hard on yourself. It's, I don't know. I think that tough love on yourself is important. I think adversity creates strength. You know, if you go to the gym and you're lifting weights and you start feeling a little like, oh, that's too much, and you just put it down because it was too much, you're never going to build up muscle.
Yeah.
Right? You got to push through that and like, oh, I can't do this. All right, I get one more.
Yeah.
And you struggle through and you're
Fresh
sweating and you're
shoulders,
gritting and
yeah.
you're, you know, but that's how you build strength. I think that analogy applies beyond just working your body. It applies for working your mind. It applies for lots of things. Like, you know, I've gone through a very challenging life. And it's that constant drive, that constant push that allows for success, right? Without that, a lot of the people I grew up with when I was younger are in jail or on drugs or,
Right.
you know, never progressed past the housing system,
Yeah.
you know?
And these guys, were they in, you know, in the construction industry, kind of involved in renovations and stuff, and that's, they gravitated toward that?
I grew up subsidized housing. You know, my mom was on welfare when I was a kid. Like, you know, not because she was lazy, but because she ended up in hard situations. You know, it's a messy world. She dealt with some very unsavory partners in her life, and you know, it put her in a hard situation. And you know, growing up, I was exposed to a very rough life, and you know, coming out of that, like a lot of people get stuck in it and they're like, oh, my life was so hard. Oh, yeah, like, but it is like, life isn't easy, right? I mean, my life was better than somebody, you know, growing up in some developing country for sure. I've had a lot more advantages than they had, but you know, it's what you do with that too that pays a lot, right? And
that's part of your drive.
Yeah. I mean, some people, I've met some people who like would feel bad about doing better than their parents, right? Or their parents will make them feel bad if they did better, like this jealousy thing.
Right.
And it's like, no, we should be. Every generation should do better.
Yeah, kind of obligated to.
Yeah, that's my feeling anyways.
And good parent would probably want that, you know?
But it's sad how many don't, you know, like I've seen a lot of it, like, you know, drugs and these other things like really pulling down a lot of our society.
Yeah.
But you
depends
know,
on what
me,
you mean by better too. I mean, success is different for different people. As well.
It is,
I mean,
yeah.
To a degree, you know, in a sense. I mean, better,
quality of life should increase with time.
I mean, not doing drugs is good. It's kind of the you know, the foundation point.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, for me, like I want my kids to not have to deal with a lot of the stuff that I had to deal with, right?
Yeah.
And
so that's got to tie into your initiative too with the business and having your first kid and the way it sparked you into it. So it's interesting to find out some of the personal stories and backgrounds of, you know, not everybody does what you're doing. Some, you know, maybe in some ways it takes a lot of the other side to get, you know, it's like maybe you can't do what you're doing unless you've been through the hard stuff.
I kind of think, you know, you look at a lot of like major innovators and a lot of them have hard lives.
Like they grew up
in
Mr. Rogers' neighborhood.
No, in some way adversity creates that, you know. But I think that goes back to that, like, you know, if you have to be in there lifting those weights and like it's
to it.
It's
so important.
Yeah, I wasn't just gonna sit by and do nothing. You know, my brain's too active for that.
You became bitter and, you know, and just kind of said, well, I'm not meant to do more than this. It's kind of it's poverty of mindset or something.
Not to say there haven't been those moments, but you know, for me, they're moments. They're not. I don't stay there.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
And I think that's something that people need to realize too. Is like, you're gonna, no matter who you are.
And
I've seen this even with like, you know, I've worked with very wealthy people in the construction industry because I specialized in doing high end work when I was doing stuff, and you know, I've gotten to work with some very wealthy people, and like, people are people. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter what car you drive, what house you live in. No. Like, we all deal with the same things. And it's like, you know, I stress now running a business. My perspective has changed. You know, 10 years ago, I'd stress about a $200 bill. Now I'm stressing about, you know, $2,000 or $10,000 bills.
Yeah, but you're still stressing.
But the feeling, that feeling of stress is no different whether it's $100 or $10,000.
Yeah.
The feeling is still the same. And that's something I think a lot of people don't really realize.
Plus, I mean, it's kind of a proven fact that, you know, after 65, 70,000 in Canada, your lifestyle, quality of life is not improving because of the amount of money you make.
Well, I think that was an old statistic, but
Yeah, maybe it is.
There's people
I'll
making.
take 150,000 a year any day.
There's people making $50,000 living in their parents' basement right now. So
Yeah, that's
and
definitely true.
You know, but we're working to fix that because
Yeah.
the housing thing is a big problem. I mean I mean housing has more than doubled in the last 3 years. So that's a challenge.
Yeah, that is.
Right. So I mean I'd say, you know, but yeah, once you're making more than, you know, probably somewhere's around 100,000, I'd say at this point in Canada. Once you're making more than that,
6 figures. Yeah.
you know, the difference from 100,000 to 200,000 is like more problems because you're more concerned about your money now. You know, like now you got investments and the stock market and all these other things. And, you know, like for me, I'm glad my life's simple. I got it in my business. Everything goes back into the business, you know. My stresses are purely around that. But I see it, you know, I've seen a lot of it with people, you know, it's more money, more problems kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But there is a level of amount that does money only creates happiness only equals happiness when you don't have your basic needs met. Once your basic needs are met.
And I guess that was why I brought that stat up,
Yeah.
which probably is old and maybe, you know, but that's kind of the point I was trying to make.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, once your needs are met. Yeah. And not every need can be met by money anyway.
Absolutely not.
The important ones aren't.
And I mean, like I say, you know, this is one of the things definitely very obvious to me now is like, it's not your bank account that's your net worth. It's your network that is your net worth, right? It's who are the people
like
that
your
you
social
have around
capital.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I can run into a problem. I might not have that money in my bank account to solve that problem, but when I reach out to my community, we can solve that problem, right? And that's it. It is so much more than the singular. And I mean, I think this is part of failings of our society too, is the lie of the self-made person. None of us are
Nobody's
self-made.
self-made. In fact, that's kind of a sad statement to make.
Yeah. I mean, I
haven't done anything on my own.
I may be more than some people, you know, like I've had to deal with a lot of things on my own and I've had to, you know, work through a lot of things on my own without a ton of support. But like, I wouldn't be here without the people who've helped me get here. Not a chance, you know, like I'm riding on the shoulders of giants, you know, like I completely recognize that. As much as I've done myself, I wouldn't be here without the people that helped me. And I think that we need to realize that as we move forward is like success is created by collaboration. Mm-hmm. Hard work is important, but it's the network. What can you build in your network to help you move you forward? Wow. And, you know, it's putting it together one piece at a time, just like our buildings.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Oh, thank you so much. Lots of wisdom there. And it's great hearing, you know, about PLAEX Building Systems and some of your personal story. And, you know, it seems like you're on the verge of something really, really special.
Yep.
Anything else you want to mention? Being here and just with the opportunity in the audience, maybe we hadn't touched on? Or?
Well, I mean, I guess, you know, leading from what we were saying is like, you know, if there are people that are interested in getting involved, you know, you see how you could contribute to this.
Mm-hmm. We'll tag all your links and website and all that kind of stuff too. And yeah.
We want more people to come and get involved with this. You know, we need more engineers who want to help certify and move this into projects, or architects who want to help push this forward. You know, if you're got a ton of experience in licensing, that's something that we're working through right now over the next, you know, 12 months or 8 to 12 months. We have to be in a position to actually start deploying our licenses. So, you know, we're discussing with a group of people and trying to iron it out, but maybe there's somebody out there that's like, hey, I've got some wisdom to bring to this. We want to hear from you. You know, I constantly bring in more of that wisdom. I think it's important to vet ideas amongst many people because, you know, it's easy to get stuck in an echo chamber of like, oh yeah, this is a great idea. Yeah. I don't like being surrounded by yes people. I like people who challenge me in a respectful way. Yeah. It's like, hey, but have you thought about this? Or hey, have you looked at it this way? You know, sometimes they're wrong. And
those are the best people to be surrounded by. You want to be challenged.
Oh yeah,
but yeah, in a respectful way. It's
yes.
You know, tone is very important, and you know, it is.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. No, I hope that this podcast helps you reach some people that you haven't yet, and that they'll reach out to you and kind of keep building your network. And best of luck in the future. Hopefully, we'll have to touch base and see how things are going. Look forward to hearing.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. And, you know, it's a pleasure chatting and sharing. And, we're doing big things. This has the potential to actually have impact, and we need scalable solutions to waste. We need automation-friendly construction, and we need to find ways to solve the housing crisis.
Yeah.
And, I truly believe that what we're doing has the ability to be this nexus point for a radical shift within the construction industry and waste management.
Awesome. Well, Dustin Bowers from PLAEX Building Systems, thanks so much for being here, man. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers. We'd like to thank our longtime sponsor, Cook Insurance. Cook is your trusted insurance broker in Atlantic, Canada for 50 years. The Cook team opens up opportunities for contractors by proactively managing the requirements of their bond facility. They expand levels of support and negotiate preferred rate, all while prioritizing ease of doing business. A Navicord partner since 2020, Cook is one of the largest construction brokers in Canada and offers national strength with a local touch. Whatever your insurance needs are, Cook has you covered. The team at Atlantic Construction Podcast has been able to build a strong relationship with the folks at FCA Surety. FCA Surety is strongly invested in supporting the Atlantic construction marketplace and helping contractors to build their businesses. We highly recommend them.